Believe you me, I've lived here most of my life. It's a very, very strange piece of water. And I have known far too many genuine people that have seen something that is totally unexplainable. This is a quote I use quite a lot. G.K. Chesterton. Men have been hung on less evidence than there is for the Loch Ness Monster.
Scotland is a wild, rugged country, steeped in myth and legend. In its waters alone, stories of sea serpents, water horses, and monsters have endured for well over 1,000 years. Splitting the country in two is the deep and dark Loch Ness, a place that now hosts one of the most famous unsolved mysteries of modern times. The first disturbing encounter officially recorded here goes way back to 565 AD, when the Irish monk St. Columba reportedly banished a water beast after it dragged a man underwater to his death. It wasn't until the early 20th century, however, that the story of the Loch Ness Monster as we know it was born.
1933 marked the start of the phenomenon of the Loch Ness Monster, when a local water bailiff based at Fort Augustus was also the local newspaper correspondent for the Inverness Courier newspaper, which is the local newspaper. And he wrote a story which was called A Strange Spectacle in Loch Ness. And it was based around a report by a local hotelier who said, look, once again, we've seen something. And it was once again, because there is a definite history before that and newspaper articles that prove that people were seeing a water horse or a water kelpie in Loch Ness. And the then Courier editor said, if it's that big or if it's that spectacular, it must be a monster. And that was it. And it got picked up by the national press, it got picked up by the international press, and the Loch Ness Monster was born.
Dedicated to keeping a record of all monster sightings is local historian Gary Campbell.
Very fragile. This came from a private collection in England. So this is the very first picture of the Loch Ness Monster. This is from the newspaper at the time, and this is from Hugh Gray in Foyers, and he said it's about 30 feet long. This is an eel type thing going across the top of the water. It was from the Daily Sketch, you can see. It was the 6th of December 1933. And of course people don't realise that this is the very first one because they think the very first one is the next one I'm going to show you. This is a pretty rare, and as you can see it is kind of fragile. But I don't know of any other copies of this. So this is the Daily Mail from 21st April 1934, the front page, which was the surgeon's photograph. And this is the iconic image of the Loch Ness Monster. That photograph changed what people think the Loch Ness Monster looks like. Now there's a lot of debate over this photograph, whether it's real, whether it's not. The people involved in it are all long dead, so whether it's actually real or not, nobody knows.
I saw the head, the neck and the huge body, which I'd say was about 30 feet long.
And what's the closest you've ever been to it?
Oh, within about less than 10 yards.
From 10 yards then, what does it really look like?
Oh, the skin, the hump, the one big hump on the skin was exactly like that of an elephant. Wrinkly, tough looking.
Is it not possible, Mr. Campbell, that you're mistaken in this, either because you're imagining things or more probable because you've been brought up to believe in this monster?
Not at all. I know perfectly well because I've seen it. And not only in the one spot, but in all different areas of Loch Ness.
That was 36 pounds at the very back. You don't like it, don't you? Look at that one there.
Here you go, look, that's for you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and you can have those things back and £1. Oh, there you go, look, have all that.
Oh,
Discount.
thank you so much. Thank you.
That's
very
right.
much.
My name's Steve Feltham, and for 29 years I've been living here on the side of Loch Ness, watching and waiting, trying to solve this mystery. I came to Loch Ness on a family holiday. I was 7 years old. That was in 1970, and I just fell in love with the mystery, the possibility. And when I was in my late 20s, I ended up in a job that I didn't like, and I started thinking about, what am I going to say when I get to a ripe old age and look back on life? What regrets am I going to have of the things that I haven't done? And this was the one thing: find the Loch Ness monster. And so, realising that this is all that I wanted to do, all that I love being involved in this hunt, I sold up everything, quit my job, bought this ex-mobile library that I now live in, and set off on the greatest adventure of my life.
This is it, and I am home. This to me is the culmination of years of dreaming. At last I'm here full time as a monster hunter. There's something in there, something unexplained, a question unanswered. It's my job from now on, indefinitely, to try and answer that question.
The plesiosaur's always been the front runner, and I would say even, certainly through my childhood, 100% plesiosaur living in Loch Ness. And when I arrived here full time with my van, that's what I came to find: long-necked dinosaurs swimming about in here. There really was back then the belief that any day now we're going to have this thing solved. How elusive can this animal be?
Loch Ness is 36 kilometres long and holds more fresh water than all the lakes and rivers in England and Wales put together. The valley was carved by glaciers, and it descends 230 metres below the surface, twice as deep as the North Sea. At this depth, there is zero visibility. If a prehistoric creature were to somehow have survived undisturbed for millions of years, you could imagine it would be in a place like Loch Ness.
I was just driving down the road. It was a March morning, I think, and it was what they call, as you'll know, a dreek day. Not warm, grey, but like anybody who drives down here, and I defy them to say they don't, I always look at the loch. Still, I always look at the loch, and the water was very calm. I saw, I thought was a disturbance on the loch. So I just stopped and I blitzed off what turned out to be 10 photographs. When some experts have looked at my photograph and worked out the distances, they say that what I saw was sitting about, I don't know, 3-4 feet out the water. Now, you can see it quite clearly there.
Unlike most of the other people who are
interested in the Loch Ness Monster or chase monsters or look for monsters or anything. I wasn't overly interested in the Loch Ness Monster. I thought it was great for the local economy. I grew up way down there at the other end of the Great Glen, moved to this part of the world in the early 1990s, and had a passing interest in Loch Ness like everybody else here does. 1996, I was sitting just across, behind me to my right, and I saw something coming out of the water. It was the corner of my eye. I saw this black hump just come out for a matter of seconds and go back in again. And I thought, seeing things. That didn't happen. And then it came out again. The best way to describe it would be to say it looked like a small whale.
Over the past 100 years, countless expeditions have used nets, cameras, submarines, and sonar to try and find the monster, known affectionately as Nessie. Each one has failed to find conclusive proof. But in recent years, a new technology has offered tantalizing possibilities to change this record. Scientists now have the power to survey an area and accurately describe the living organisms within it. In the right pair of hands, this technology could potentially solve the world's greatest monster mystery, once and for all. Flying in from New Zealand is award-winning professor Neil Gemmell, a pioneer in the growing field of environmental DNA. Neil is determined to find answers.
We've arrived at Loch Ness after a very long flight, and we're here for 2 weeks to sample extensively around Loch Ness from many different sites and also at many different depths so that we can get a really good representation of the biological diversity in the loch. I don't believe there's a monster, but many people do, and we all want to know whether I'm right as a skeptic or they're right as believers.
Neil is working with an international team of scientists, including Adrian Shine, the loch's resident expert. The expedition is being billed as the final, definitive search.
We're in the laboratory at the Loch Ness Centre, which my own Loch Ness project was allowed to put here back in the 1990s. And from here, we're able to provide a certain logistic base for all sorts of investigations on the loch. And it's resulted in about 30 years of species lists and other bits of data, which will be fascinating to compare with this latest project, which is the environmental DNA.
Do you have gloves? So we picked these up with the idea that we couldn't find Nalgene bottles.
Oh, okay.
But these are click-clacks, they hold 1.3 litres, and we can do 5 sites. We have buckets for the dipping of stuff into.
The best buckets I've ever seen.
So, I mean, after this project, Dave, you've got all the makings of an excellent cleaning company.
Well, I do, yes. Absolutely.
With their equipment ready, the team prepare for the first step of research.
So we are going to collect 15 samples of water, so that's 5 independent samples with 3 replicates. The DNA that's in those could be anything from fish that are in the loch to bacteria to invertebrates. And who knows, there might be something else out there that we don't fully yet understand biologically. If I see a beastie, I'll be back quite quickly. I put on a fresh pair of gloves. That was, I don't know. So this is Urquhart Bay here, right?
Yep.
So this is where there's been more monster sightings than any other part of the loch.
Do you want to collect the first?
I can collect, yeah, sure. Do you want to take the GPS?
Right, yes.
That look like enough, Christina?
Yeah.
Yeah. With the...
Sample 1, baby.
Should I go?
Yeah, go for your life.
As organisms interact with their environment, they leave behind traces of their DNA. This could be in the form of skin cells, hair, bones, or feces. eDNA is the process of sampling from environments, such as the fresh water in Loch Ness. Samples are then filtered so that only the organic material remains. DNA can then be extracted and sequenced against known databases of thousands of animals, plants, and microbial species. The aim is to provide a definitive list of life in and around the loch, and in doing so, finally find out what creature Nessie might be, or whether she exists at all.
I can't remember the last time I saw something as wee as that. I think I've probably heard every single suggestion as to what Nessie might be, from dinosaurs through to seals, fish, ghosts, portals into other dimensions, aliens. To kids, it's some bit of fun. There's lots and lots of kids' books, and stories, toys and such like. To the local community here, it's a tourist attraction. Thanks very much. You'll come see the Loch Ness Monster. We'll sell you a little fluffy Nessie. Thank you. You stay a couple of nights and be on your way. But to the scientific community, it's something you don't touch unless you're heading towards retirement, because it'll finish off your career almost certainly. And then there are about 200 or 300 people worldwide who are genuinely interested in the study of cryptozoology, which is the study of hidden animals, and that is the official name for Nessie hunters and Bigfoot hunters and all the rest of it, and all the people who are right into it. And it's a very, very small community. It really is.
There are probably 4 hypotheses that we can specifically test that have been put forward as potential explanations for the monster. And one of the most outrageous is this idea that there's a Jurassic Age reptile stuck in Loch Ness. So we don't know what a plesiosaur DNA sequence looks like exactly, but we can make a pretty good guess. So the dinosaurs' modern descendants, if you like, are the birds, and one of their ancient cousins are the crocodiles. So we would expect a plesiosaur sequence to fit somewhere between birds and crocodilians. And if we find that, I'll be very surprised and possibly quite famous, I don't know. And then the other thing that we'll be testing is the idea that the Loch Ness Monster may be a giant fish of some shape, form or description. And a giant sturgeon may be, in fact, the explanation for some of the sightings. And then the third one that I'm quite keen on is the idea that there might be a giant catfish in Loch Ness. The other ideas that people have put forward are giant eels. Unfortunately, the DNA can't tell us if it's giant or small. It's just that it's an eel.
Ahoy!
I wonder if you heard the recording I did on New Zealand radio.
Good to meet you, Willie. Neil Gemmell.
Neil, very, very pleased to meet you. Very pleased to meet you.
Yeah.
Heard a lot about you, and did a wee recording for New Zealand radio.
Oh, jolly good.
They got breakfast. They did me on a late on a Monday night.
Willie is a vocal advocate for the region, frequently travelling the world to promote Loch Ness.
From a wildlife point of view, around Loch Ness there are otters, pine marten, red squirrels, badgers, roe deer, red deer. Fish in the loch, there's salmon, sea trout, but the most unusual fish in the loch is the Arctic char, left over from the Ice Age. Eels, lamprey, sticklebacks. There's quite a number of sightings around the Loch Ness area of non-indigenous cats, cougars, panthers. From a naturalist point of view, fantastic. Without the monster, it's still a wonderful area to come for. But the fact of the Loch Ness Monster, from a tourist point of view, has been undoubtedly a tremendous contributor to the economy of the area. So much so that there is probably 1.4 million people a year come here now, considering the population of the loch is less than 5,000 people. There's many a lake in the world wouldn't mind having a monster as popular as Nessie is.
The classic monster hunter, the guy who gives it all up and lives in a tent beside Loch Ness. I'm going to solve this. Steve Feltham is beside Loch Ness, he's got his van and all the rest of it. And these are people who have dedicated their entire life to it. So I think that the classic way of searching for the Loch Ness Monster is dying out. But that's because the world's moved on. It's like the classic way of going to America in the 1940s was to get a boat, and now we fly. So if you're going to give your life up, then you're taking a big risk.
Since myself and my predecessors have been failing to find Loch Ness monsters for 50 odd years, you could ask a few questions. Now, either we're utterly useless, because after all, Loch Ness is a finite environment and we've been at it a long time, or there may not be a Loch Ness monster. In 1987, with our Operation Deep Scan, I had 120 crew members on all the boats.
After years of meticulous planning, Operation Deep Scan got into full swing this morning with the final message from the project leader.
Keep faith with all the maligned eyewitnesses who look to you for vindication.
The fleet of boats converted from holiday cruisers have been equipped with sonar capable of picking up a fish just 3 inches long, hundreds of feet down in the loch. This is the area where the two unidentified sonar contacts were made yesterday. Today the team are searching the same area, hoping they don't find anything, because that means the contacts have moved on and could be alive. As the boat swept over the same area, a strong sonar contact was established again, but its position had changed, and when a support boat went to check it, it had gone.
That was a fleet action, a line of vessels dropping this sonar curtain. And we swept the loch, and we went all the way down to Fort Augustus, and we came all the way back.
A packed press conference waited to see the evidence. A faint line on the sonar trace nearly 600 feet down in the loch.
They are, in terms of the presentation, of a strength greater than any of the fish we are familiar with in Loch Ness.
Now, there were 3 targets which we don't understand. Now, the fact I don't understand a target might simply mean I just don't understand, all right? Doesn't mean it's a Loch Ness Monster. Along with things that you see, by the way, you know, just because you see something on Loch Ness that you don't understand, makes it a Loch Ness Monster perhaps for you, but it doesn't mean that it is.
Few people think sturgeon could account for it, and not even sturgeon that are resident in here, but sturgeon that have been coming in, breeding, and then going back out again. For me, for a long time, the front runner has been a thing called the Wales catfish. They're the second biggest freshwater fish in the world. They've got this very smooth back, and they live for about 100 years. There is accounts in 2 lakes in England of, during the Victorian era, Wales catfish being released into those lakes for fishing. Maybe in the Victorian era, a dozen juvenile Wales catfish were released into here, they reach maturity, they grow to 4 meters long, these things. They're big fish. On a calm day, these catfish are chasing after the other fish. It goes along briefly. We get a sighting of a back. It realizes it's too high in its world, so back down. It's only by accident that the back ever breaks the surface. That now, to me, ticks more boxes than long-necked dinosaurs. In order to fund my 30 years sitting here, I make these little Nessie models, little souvenir, that I offer people the opportunity that if they buy one and they can prove that Nessie doesn't look like this, if they bring this back, I will give them their money back. And as yet, nobody's managed to do that. So as yet, this is still guaranteed accurate. If it turns out to be a Wales catfish, I'm going to be in big trouble, because there's going to be a queue of people going across this car park with these that don't look like a Wales catfish saying, I want my money back.
One of the most plausible explanations is that it's some sort of large eel. We had a report again about 15 odd years ago. It was people who fish in Loch Ness, and they said, listen, we fish in Loch Ness, we've got a boat, it's a 16-foot boat with an outboard motor. We've seen an eel going past on the surface that's longer than the boat. This was the postcards from 1933. And what we have here is an image of what people thought the Loch Ness Monster looked like, you know, so it's like teeth, big ears, you name it, again, teeth, big ears, all the rest of it. More things, you know, it's got a sheep in its mouth in this particular one. It's got ears even in that one, okay? So, and then, but it's, as it goes on, even a year later in 1934, it starts to look much more like what the surgeon took. And this here is a very, very unusual. I've only seen, this is the only copy I've ever seen of this. And that is people saying that Hitler was the Loch Ness Monster. It comes from a 1934 drawing, and that's people saying then that Hitler was a monster and associating it with what was in Loch Ness. So.
So, what are we, you know, Loch Ness Monster is a complete waste of time. What are you doing? Go and do something useful. Feed the homeless in Inverness. You know, and it's a Nordic shark, you numpty. Nordic shark, which I think they mean Greenland shark.
They do mean a Greenland shark, yeah.
I mean, how the hell?
Well, they don't come into fresh water.
They don't come into fresh water for stuff. They're not even particularly strong swimmers. They're sort of sit and lurk predators.
For hundreds of years, yeah.
Sturgeons are pretty hard to catch too, aren't they?
And the catfish is the other one, you know, astonishing thing for a European catfish.
How big?
Well,
half the size of a car. The biggest ones caught so far are in France and Italy. Probably something in the vicinity of 200 kilo, 4 to 5 metres long.
It's gigantic.
If you were in a boat and this thing poked its head up above the water or close to the water, the mouth is this size, right? The size of this table.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? I'd say that's a monster.
Yeah, it's a monster.
I'd probably brick it. I certainly wouldn't be going swimming.
No, it's a monster.
It's a monster.
Different species live at different depths within the loch, and, as Operation Deep Scan suggested, the most likely spot for a monster is in the trenches far below the surface. Neil and Adrian are devising a way to safely sample over 200 metres down.
It's going pretty good. We've just got all the gear we were worried about not arriving. It's just arrived.
Just getting it.
If you gentlemen could hold it, I will run it out.
Yeah, so this is the rope that we've just received from China. It's specialty product that they've made for us, 280 metres in length, so that we can actually get easily down to the bottom of Loch Ness, 230 metres down. Oh. Tripping over my own feet now. It has an outer woven cover, so that makes it easier to handle, and on the inside it has pretty much a solid Dyneema core, so it's very, very strong. Stronger than a steel cable. And what it's attached to is this device here, which is called a Friedlander sampler, or Friedinger sampler, sorry. And the Friedinger sampler is effectively an open tube that can be closed at a specific depth when you send a special weight down, which will bang onto this and close it up. Ready?
Ready.
Yes! Like I bought one.
That's gratifying, isn't it? Yes, like I bought one.
That's a good one, that is. As far as I can tell, he's made absolutely no contact with me whatsoever, which I'm a little bit disappointed in, considering we seem to be trying to identify the same thing. Is he maybe trying to keep a slight distance from Nessie hunting, which is very much what I do, and try to be more into the whole food chain of the loch, all the living organisms, so be more scientific about an overall picture, and so the Nessie aspect of it is, well, it can't, the Nessie aspect of it can't just be a byproduct, because if that were the case, then why hasn't he gone to Lake Windermere to do it? He's come to Loch Ness. It's that cachet of the possibility of Nessie, and that's exactly why Professor Gemmels brought his discipline here and not somewhere else. And hopefully he's going to add something to the jigsaw puzzle, something that we don't already know. You'll definitely find things like otters. They're here, they're swimming in the water. You should find dogs, there's plenty of dogs that swim in the Loch Ness. You should find humans, wild swimmers all the time now. And another creature that I'm always quite fascinated by when there's one in the loch is a seal. They're only in here very infrequently. You get a sighting of it, and but it's not resident in Loch Ness. Quite excited to see what he has to say.
What echo depth? 214, 214. You'll be asking the question, won't you, inevitably, what would happen if we find something that we don't recognize? Because an immense number of species have actually had their DNA signatures catalogued for us. Well, at least we would, I think, be able to see whether we were dealing with a reptile, a mammal, an amphibian, a fish, something like that. And maybe if you had a reptile, which everybody would like, you might be able to tell whether it was more like a turtle or more like a crocodile, for example.
Ready?
Okay.
Bada bing. That wasn't bad, but when you've got the water resistance, it's going to make a difference. The colour of this water makes everything look slightly odd.
DNA in water is fragile and becomes undetectable after a few days. Neil and the team need to get as many sites sampled in as short a time as possible, for fear of a creature slipping past undetected.
And it didn't close.
No?
No. Try again.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, great.
Now we need to run that through there.
Why else you make two holes? I think if you would put the knot here, because the messenger will just hit the knot.
I'll show you.
Yeah.
Right. You do have to show GJ, he won't stop. No. Let's just get over the side and see if we can actually get it to do its thing. You right?
Success! Okay.
Let's just check it.
I think that's 150.
When I decided to do the project, because I could see that my children were excited about it, I could see that their friends were excited about it, and in my heart I was excited about it. I knew that people intrinsically want to search. It's why we climb to the top of mountains and we go to the depths of the ocean. We want to know what's out there, we want to understand our world, and we want to describe the things that we don't know in a better way. Just like when I was little in the bed and I was worried about the monster under my bed or in the wardrobe, did I pull the covers over my head and ignore it? Well, yeah, quite a lot. But also you turn on the light and you look under. Because, you know, yes, you're frightened about what you might discover, but you also want to know.
Is that it? Bring it on back. Bring it on back. Boo-ba-doo-boo. So it's a sample of Loch Ness water from about 200 metres down.
The community here is quite polarised in a way. If you or your father or grandfather saw a big animal in Loch Ness, you may believe, as we say, in the Loch Ness Monster. If you've lived here all your life and you've not seen anything, and your father didn't, your grandfather before him, you may well be sceptical.
The general public love the possibility, the hope that science hasn't answered everything, that there's still a chance of big discoveries.
We don't want it solved, we want the unknown. And here at Loch Ness, you have got one of the greatest unknown stories that the greatest detectives in the world have never figured out. The greatest scientists in the world have never figured out. 2011, taken by a gentleman called Jonathan Bright. But what it was, he's taken a photograph of a wave. See the wave there, the head of the wave? And then when it's blown up, looks like the head of the monster. But I tell you, after a couple of drams, I think I would believe it was the Loch Ness Monster myself. I would be delighted. This was another postcard I had, 12th September 1984 at 7 o'clock at night. This is what he was looking at. She's taking the picture, and then this object making its way up the loch.
Humanity does actually want to believe in monsters. All cultures have folklore. In order to have monsters and dragons, we do need lost worlds, inaccessible worlds. And Loch Ness provides that because of its great volume, its darkness. It is dragon country.
That 1933 article, which was called A Strange Spectacle in Loch Ness and appeared on the front page of the Inverness Courier, it wasn't a front page splash like you would see today with photographs and monsters. It was literally this size. And it just said, A Strange Spectacle in Loch Ness. Why was it picked up by the media at that time? But it's important to remember that just before that, the film King Kong had been released to worldwide acclaim, for want of a better word. And the world was used to seeing big creatures that might be scary. In that case, it was hanging off the Empire State Building. Because of the success of the film King Kong, and also other things like the War of the Worlds and the Land That Time Forgot, all of which were talking about strange and unusual creatures. The fact that there might be one actually here became an international story. And immediately, the monster hunters started turning up.
After weeks of hard work, the expedition came to an end. Neil and the team left Scotland to sequence the DNA in laboratories around the world. Data was analysed and debated, and conclusions eventually reached. Now, Neil is back in Scotland and ready to reveal the results.
When we left Loch Ness, we extracted the DNAs from those samples, and that took several weeks. And since then, the DNA sequences went all over the world, and people performed their analyses using the best computer tools that they had, and they came back with answers. And that's taken us the best part of a year to pull all that data together, do the analyses, retest things when we needed to, have a discussion about what it is we actually thought we'd found, and start to try to consolidate that into something looking like a scientific paper.
With over 1,000 officially recorded sightings, the Loch Ness Monster remains one of the most enduring icons for those who believe something unknown still exists on planet Earth. With scientific results imminent, the world's greatest monster mystery could be coming to an end.
I've lived with the story all my life. As far as I'm concerned, I am a true believer. So whatever he says is not going to make one iota of a difference to me. I will always believe that there is something out there. And as they say in the movies, the truth is out there.
Okay, good morning everybody. Today we welcome back to the Loch Ness Centre Professor Neil Gemmell of the University of Otago, and he's brought with him the results of last year's expedition. Professor Gemmell. Thank you.
All right, well thank you. I'm not intimidated at all. We are pleased to be here at the Loch Ness Centre to present our results, and I thank Adrian Shine and the owners here for their generous support of our project. In total, we collected about 250 water samples which we have processed. We've then analysed those, and we describe in order of around about 3,000 species at the moment that are present in Loch Ness. All right, let's get down to it. Is there a plesiosaur in Loch Ness? No. There is absolutely no evidence of any reptilian sequences in our samples. So I think we can be fairly sure that there is probably not a giant scaly reptile swimming around in Loch Ness.
There aren't any plesiosaurs in Loch Ness. Big surprise. Well, we haven't really thought there were for over 30 years because the water is far too cold for reptiles.
We also tested the idea there might be giant fish in Loch Ness. So there's one called the Wells catfish, which is at the upper there. These occur in Europe, and they've been introduced to parts of Great Britain during the 1800s. There may be giant catfish in Loch Ness, but we didn't detect any of them.
Plesiosaurs, fair enough. Catfish, fair enough.
There's also a suggestion that Adrian has put forward, and others, that there may be sturgeon that come migrating up into the Ness system on occasion. Again, we didn't find any evidence of sturgeon in our DNA samples.
I don't agree with him when he dismisses sturgeon. If the theory is right, they come in, then they go back out again to salt water.
Creatures we know are in the loch evaded that detection, such as seals, otters, merganser ducks, cormorants. So if the density of a species is very low, it might not be detected. And if a species, a candidate, is migratory, that is coming in from the sea, then obviously it wouldn't be detected at all.
But there is one idea that remains plausible, although the evidence for this is fairly anecdotal.
There is large amounts of eel DNA in Loch Ness. Eels are very plentiful in the loch system. Every single sampling site that we went to pretty much had eels. And the sheer volume of it was a bit of a surprise. Now, is it possible that what people are seeing is a giant eel?
Eels, get a grip. For a grown man to say, we've categorically say there's a large population of eels in Loch Ness, well done. You didn't need to travel halfway around the world to tell us that, because a 12-year-old boy with a fishing rod can tell you there's eels in Loch Ness. That's like saying we can categorically say there's some fish in Loch Ness. And the world's media have turned up to hear that.
It turns out that actually a giant eel was one of the first ideas put forward in the 1930s for an explanation for what people were seeing during those early sightings. So that's sort of where we're landing here, is that we can't refute the idea that there are eels in Loch Ness, and it is possible that maybe there is a giant one. All right.
You haven't found seal DNA?
No, but it's complicated.
Well,
so we know we know seals do get into the loch. We didn't find it partly because in our experiment we use a positive control. That positive control was species that were common in New Zealand that I work on in my laboratory.
Seals are big animals. He hasn't found any DNA of seals, and yet I've got numerous photographs and film of seals, and he hasn't found seal DNA. So does that mean that piece of film is a fake? Where does that leave? He says, well, we can't find everything. Otters.
Actually, we didn't find any otter sequences in our sample.
What DNA did you use for plesiosaurs?
I mean, plesiosaurs extinct, but very clearly a reptile. So it should sit somewhere between crocodilians and birds, and there was nothing remotely like that in our sequences.
Birds? You didn't find birds, you said? Ducks? Did you find any?
We found tons of birds, tons of ducks. We found pheasant, I mentioned that. So,
as far as looking for the Loch Ness Monster, I don't think it really came into the equation at all, considering the fact that such a small sample of water was taken, the period of time that DNA lasts in the water, the fact that they never found any seals in the water, the fact that they never found any otters in the water. 20% of the DNA was not found or examined.
20% of the sequences are unexplained DNA. What that generally is error in the sampling and the sequencing. So the DNA gets broken or mucked up, it doesn't sequence as cleanly as you'd like, or it's very short as opposed to being a long sequence, and so you can't map it as categorically as you like.
All he's done is confirmed what we know and left us in exactly the same situation as all the photographs and all the sightings that come to me, which is, oh there's something else unexplained in Loch Ness. I wonder what it is.
Our sampling isn't perfect. It's a thimble full in a very large loch. It's a temporal sample, so maybe we just didn't sample at the right time. For the Nessie believers, maybe Nessie was on holiday. Nessie's a time traveller. There's wormholes and it pops in and out of dimensions. Hello, Steve. We've teased a few people from time to time. Some will be annoyed that, we've landed not with a plesiosaur, but that's okay. They'll get over it. I think a lot of people were interested in this idea and thought about it, but hadn't really pursued it because of, the associations. You're a monster hunter, you're chasing monsters. And I don't think it's done my career any damage, but certainly there are a few people who ask the question, why are you doing this? And the simple answer is, here's a platform to communicate science in a new way. And my kids think it's great, and their friends think it's great. And, if there are colleagues who are not quite getting what we're trying to do, which is to popularise science, then, that's too bad.
And as for the DNA results here, Neil, there's obviously a degree of ambiguity. So how confident can you really be that there is no large or undiscovered creature here?
There is always this uncertainty. So we've got no support in our study for the Jurassic hypothesis, we've got no support for the giant catfish, for the sturgeon. Does that mean there is no such creature in Loch Ness? We can't say that. I mean, it's just science, right? So science is great at proving stuff. It's much harder to prove a negative. So what's the evidence? What's the body of evidence? If there's nothing in here, if there is no monster, how many times do you have to go out and prove that there is no monster before you say there probably isn't a monster? You can never say there's definitely not a monster because you haven't proven that there isn't. It's just so there's always this element of doubt. Well, you know, it's like religion. You know, have we proof of God? No, we don't. Do people believe in God? Yes, they do, by their millions. That sheer weight of evidence hasn't stopped people coming here, looking out over this body of water and hoping they'll see something special.